I will say, and I know that our last caller didn't mean this, with his analogy of you buy a Range Rover and you drive it around a little bit, and it keeps having to go back to the shop. But you got your Honda is in the garage, and it is so reliable. You've been driving it for 10 years. And so if you had to take the family on vacation, which car would you take? Through a 17-stop journey. Well, obviously where he's tracking toward is the Honda. And I know you didn't mean this, but...
You don't want to call Purdy a Honda?
Stop calling him a Honda. Why does Brock Purdy have to be, just because of when he was picked, why does he have to be limited in terms of who he could be in this league? Why does it have to be that way? I know the obvious stuff. Oh, he doesn't have a howitzer of an arm. Right, like most of the other good quarterbacks in the league. I know Pat does. I know Josh does. I know Herbert does. I know a lot of great quarterbacks in the league who don't. Why does he have to be 6'4"? Why does he have to have great wheels, which we thought Trey Lance has, and now we don't? So I do wonder that sometimes. As much as you're all right to say Brock Purdy might not be great, I think it's unfair to say that he definitely won't be.
I think it's interesting because I think that's more than fair. I think when you look at it, I think you can make the case. We don't know yet what the ceiling is going to be. And I think that goes back to the conversation we were having a little bit yesterday where you were talking about the excitement and why is the excitement down. And I think maybe part of that reason is that there's this belief that Brock has already peaked because it was so good. Because it was so good last year that we've seen the best of Brock Purdy. And you know what? There's no way this 7th-round pick is going to keep doing that. He's probably closer to Jimmy, or he's probably closer to Kirk Cousins. And yeah, they can win with him, and he can be pretty good. But is he really going to be that superstar franchise quarterback that is the luxury vehicle as opposed to the Honda? That's the part that I think people. But you're right. You can't assume that he's a Honda. You
can't assume it.
I agree with you on that.
Like he's probably not the same way every human being is probably not.
Well, you can't assume that he's a Honda any more than you can say that Trey Lance is a Pinto.
Right
now.
I mean, this is where to me the Tom Brady comp does work. I don't like using their names in the same sentence because Tom Brady's the most accomplished quarterback of all time. I'm not going to put that on Brock Purdy.
No.
I understand that they were both late-round picks. But, again, if you're going to call Joe Montana and Tom Brady, if you're going to run around and talk about how these are the two greatest quarterbacks of all time, well, look at them. Look at them. Look at their skill set. Look at their body. Look at the way they move. There's literally nothing special about either of them. And they're the two most accomplished quarterbacks who've ever put helmets on. So that's all I'm saying. Yes, it can happen. And he obviously does not need to be that for this to be really a good thing. He could be well short of Montana and Brady, and this could still be. Plus, I can give you, as you all know, we can give you a list that goes to the rest of the show of the people who are 6'4", who have a howitzer, who can't play. Jeff George, what an arm. Cool. What does that do for you? It does nothing for you. So, Marcus in the city here with Willard and JD. Hey, Marcus, what you doing?
Hey, how's it going, brother?
Good.
I'm just calling to say, but if y'all watched that game when he was going to be the starter of the Texas game in the preseason, I don't even think we scored in that game, and he had control of that game. You know, he was the man behind center, and when Kyle Shanahan seen that, that's when he re-signed Jimmy Garoppolo, because they was going to get rid of him that year.
You talking about the preseason game last year, Marcus?
Didn't have it.
Marcus, are you talking about the preseason game last year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Third preseason game last year.
You might be right, but I would just also, I keep trying to submit this. I think that we see these preseason games and we suddenly have a big reaction because that's what we see. Kyle sees everything. You know what I mean? And you can get mad at his quarterback evaluation, and that's all fair. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking just about he's in the building, and they're watching practices, and they're watching film, and Like, do you think this, JD? I don't think Kyle Shanahan goes into any one preseason game and goes, okay, that's it. Now I've made up my mind.
Never.
Like, he's got a big, huge bucket of data, evidence, impressions, all of those things.
No, I think he went through this offseason in part believing that Brock Purdy may not be ready to go. So Trey Lance alone, and he was dealing with coming off his own injury, but Trey Lance alone was not going to be enough in terms of just having assuming that he could be the backup.
Yeah.
Like, they needed another veteran quarterback to basically take the Jimmy spot at this point, because you didn't know, even if you thought Trey was going to start, and I think you could make the case that Kyle Shanahan had some reservations about that, assuming Purdy wasn't ready. Even if you thought Trey was going to, you still need another veteran in the room beyond Trey. And so they go and they get Darnold, and then it trends toward, all right, Brock's good to go. So it sets up now this competition between those two. And the reason there's the competition between those two is because of the reservations that have been built up over what Trey Lance has done within the building when he has had the opportunities that not everybody has been able to see. That's part of it.
I agree. I think that our perception sometimes is that coaches, and this is not just Shanahan, that coaches are like us. Like, we sit down, we've got a remote control, we got a beer, and we're like, okay, let's react. And we're just like, okay, we see what we see the results, we either like them or we don't. A coach is much more proactive than that. A coach is looking for certain things. You heard when Kyle said the other day, I'd love to see Trey play more like this, like be more aggressive, be more decisive. I'm looking for that. So he's got this, in other words, this bar or this list of things. And it's like, I want you to do this. And until you do those things, we're not moving on to the next step. Do you know what I mean? It's like teaching a kid to ride a bike. I'm not sending you out into the street until I can see you do it in the private parking lot or a playground at your school, and then we're going to head you out into the street. Well, if you're not hitting those markers in practice and camp, well, then we're not doing a game yet.
Well, and to that point, the play that he was referring to when he mentioned that was the interception that turned into a touchdown. It was maybe the worst play of the day.
One of them.
One of them, fair. But it's.
But he liked that he pulled the trigger at least.
So he found something even in that to where we're all thinking, oh my God, that's the worst play we've ever seen him make. And he's thinking, well, yeah, okay, yes, you don't want to see an interception, but I want to see the process by which he got to make that throw.
Do you know what's fascinating about that comment? And again, this is one of the reasons JT O'Sullivan is coming on in an hour and a half. I almost wonder now, watching JT's video about this play at his own 10-yard line where he just had a receiver wide open twice for what would have been at least a 20-yard gain and never threw it. Now maybe you understand. Kyle sees that. And then when you go to the touchdown play, you're like, oh, that's why Kyle liked it. Because at least the guy cocked the ball and threw it.
Yeah, open.
The first play is like he never threw it. He just sits there and takes the sack. And then the fans are like, well, there's no offensive line. It's like, oh, my God. You got to get rid of the ball. Of all three quarterbacks, he had the longest period of time on average to throw the ball in that game.